Woo! Man, I got to tell you, that was close. I thought we were going to get through a season without hearing anything stupid out of Sheryl Swoop's mouth and anything that sounds rather interesting, something that you might choose to give some side eye.
The Indiana Fever just hit the league with a plot twist that had the entire WNBA buzzing. In a single sweeping move, they cut not one but two high-profile rookies from the roster, sending shockwaves across the basketball world. And just as fans are trying to wrap their heads around it, Sheryl Swoops, the president of the anti-Caitlin Clark Club, stepped out of shadows like it was her personal comeback tour. Only this time her target wasn't just Caitlin Clark. It was a whole Fever operation.
Have a black player that just got cut, and Sheryl Swoops is not happy about.
What started as a standard roster shakeup quickly turned into full-blown league drama, dripping with tension, and the kind of headlines that practically write themselves. When we all thought Swoops had been banished into parts unknown, she still found herself randomly reappearing out of nowhere. What did she have to say, and how is the Indiana Fever shutting down all this noise? Let us know in the comments what you think of Swoops. Let's go.
Nuts, but unfortunately for the old WNBA fandom and media, in her case, media and old players, unfortunately, in some cases, you do feel like there is something else lurking behind said opinions that may not be basketball related. Let's put it that way.
Let's start with the cuts that made the headlines. The Indiana Fever just pulled off one of the most aggressive preseason roster moves in recent memory. Bree Hall, yes, that Bree Hall, the electric guard and two-time national champion out of South Carolina, got the boot before she even had a chance to lace up for real minutes. That's right, not a single second of game time in the opener against Washington. Sparse minutes against Brazil, and next thing you know, she's gone. And if that felt like a gut punch, just wait because the Fever weren't done.
All is now gone, as you know. And today it was announced that Yvonne Ejim has been waived by the Fever as well. Sophie Cunningham talked about that yesterday, saying you can latch on to another team, another place.
Just because you didn't make a roster doesn't mean you're out of the W forever.
Around 24 hours later, the team announced that Yvonne Ejim, scoring leader from Gonzaga, and a player with enough heart to power the entire Pacific Northwest, was also cut. Two rookies, both with glittering college resumes and real promise, were handed pink slips before they could even unpack their bags. Both had barely enough time to warm up and were gone just like that. That's the cruelty of pro sports in full display. It's not always about talent. It's about timing, fit, and sometimes sheer roster math. Dreams meet the business side of basketball.
Indiana Fever, as expected, have waived Yvonne Ejim. She's just not at the level that the Indiana Fever are hoping her to be at.
The Fever announced it directly. Thank you, Yvonne Ejim, who was the all-time leading scorer in Gonzaga.
Of course, the natural question becomes why these two? To understand the sting, you got to see the situation of the Fever's salary cap because of Katie Lou Sampson's bloated contract that the Fever had to buy out to sign key veterans. The team could only afford 11 players on the roster, all veterans such as Natasha Howard, Dana Bonner, Sydney Carlson, Bree Turner, Sophie Cunningham, Dyrus Dennis, and the newly reassigned Kelsey Mitchell have at least 1 year guaranteed contracts, which means that if they were cut, the Fever would still have to absorb their salaries on their books. The only ones that theoretically could be cut from the existing roster and have their salaries removed from the books are those in their original rookie contracts they signed when they were drafted, meaning Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull, and nobody in their right mind would cut these three. That means 10 out of 11 roster spots are locked.
And it's hard, right? We all reached out. I think that they brought really good people in, great people into training camp this year. But, just because you didn't make this spot, this is probably one of the harder rosters to make in the W this year. It doesn't mean you're out of the W. And you just got to keep ready, keep playing, keep grinding it out. And if it's hard to make the league. I know Sid and I, we were second rounders. We stuck to her experience is a little bit different than mine, but just because you didn't make a roster doesn't mean you're out of the W.
In reality, all three rookies, including Michaela Timpson, who's been showing flashes of brilliance during training camp and preseason games, are just fighting for one spot. Highly likely that spot will go to Timpson, given the need for younger forwards in the rotation and her ability to run the floor and provide elite defense. Fans are calling her the steal of the draft. Picked at 19th when a lot expected her to be in the top 10.
Simpson is obviously at a certain level. She's a rim runner. She just obviously has a higher ceiling than Ejim at the moment. And this is maybe a hot.
For fans of Hall and Egypt, this hits differently. This wasn't just a box score move. It was a cold, hard intersection of salary caps, limited roster spots, and a brutal race for a championship window. These cuts hurt because they represent more than talent. They represent hope, and just like that, 2 dreams were deferred.
All, we saw Sheryl Swoops in rare form, hating on Caitlin Clark all last year. Well, maybe she has figured out, well, hating on Clark, I've been told that's not really a great idea, yada, yada, yada. So what other white girls can I tune up from the Indiana Fever?
Naturally, it didn't take long for the backlash to hit, and leading the charge, megaphone in hand, was none other than Sheryl Swoops. The moment Bree Hall's cut hit the newswire, Swoops lit up like she'd been waiting all offseason for this kind of controversy. Her return wasn't casual. It was a full-on verbal body slam.
Example, the Washington Mystics Indiana Fever game. Because I know on social media, people were like, well, why aren't the starters in for the Mystics? They could win this game. And I was there, right? Because preseason is about, yes, you're going to play your starters, you're going to play your players. Typically, they don't even play that many minutes, right? Because you have so many players on your roster that you got to make roster cuts. So you're still trying to figure out who can fit what we're doing.
On the latest episode of the Women's Hoop Show, Swoops didn't just express concern. She launched a one-woman verbal offensive, and her primary target was head coach Stephanie White. According to Swoops, White didn't just mishandle the rotations. She practically sabotaged them. Why, she asked, was Bree Hall kept on the bench while others with less upside got priority minutes?
Did have a question, though, with Indiana, right? Because even though the starters weren't in, like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hall they've been in the league for a while. You actually had players who, like Bree Hall, why wasn't she in that game per se? If you're still trying to figure out who's going to make the team, who you're going to cut. So I was a little confused with what Steph was.
If you're still figuring out who to cut, why wasn't Bree Hall even playing? She demanded. And if that wasn't point enough, the subtext was even louder. This wasn't just about basketball IQ. It was about who gets the benefit of the doubt, who's allowed to prove themselves, and who gets sidelined before they can even step onto the stage. And if you thought Swoops was done, think again. She turned the heat up even higher, taking aim at the 2 players who did benefit from White's game plan. Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull are 2 women Swoops took aim at, but whose presence she questioned with surgical precision. The way she framed it. Let's just say the implications were loud enough to echo through every WNBA Twitter space.
Okay. This is going to be a spicy season because Kiki was like, what, Sophie? Girl, don't come over here. Sophie was like,
already,
I was
game one.
Here for it. But the fact that's a rookie, right?
I know. She did not back down.
But she just turned and laughed. She was like, what? What did you say? What do we do?
And then came the comment that all but confirmed her angle Swoops with a healthy dose of sarcasm, quipping that maybe she should focus on tuning up the other white girls on the Fever now that she'd been told to leave Clark alone. That's not subtle. That's not shade. That's a full spotlight and a narrative bomb dropped in the middle of the room.
My goodness. I mean, we've had 2 preseason games. 2! And we're back to it. We're back here. She's criticizing Stephanie White. I bet Sheryl Swoops hates that last name. Criticizing Stephanie White. And, of course, it relates to Lexi Hall and Sophie Cunningham. Oh, I bet Sheryl Swoops hates her some Sophie Cunningham. You know she...
Let's not forget this isn't Swoops' first anti-Clark rodeo. She was one of the earliest voices to question Caitlin Clark's records. Her style, her swagger, her age, her leadership, pretty much everything short of her shoe size. And now that Clark has the full backing of the Indiana Fever and fans across the globe, Swoops isn't just focused on Clark. She's got eyes on the whole perimeter. Cunningham Hall. Anyone who dares to link arms with Clark in building this new WNBA powerhouse?
Swoops hadn't shied away from speaking her mind, as last season she raised questions about the legitimacy of Indiana Fever stars Caitlin Clark's collegiate scoring record. During the recent episode, Swoops questioned Fever head coach Stephanie White's decision to give veterans like Lexi Hall and Sophie Cunningham minutes over Bree Hall and then cut her without giving her a fair opportunity to prove herself.
At this point, it's becoming pretty clear. Swoops doesn't just dislike what the Fever are building. She resents it. She sees this influx of young, confident talent reshaping the league's face, and she's not interested in celebrating it. She's here to challenge it, question it, and if necessary, scorch the court with commentary every step of the way. But while Swoops stirs the pot, Clark and the Fever are stirring excitement. Sure, they cut 2 promising rookies, and yes, that stings, but they did it with the full intent of building contender. Bree Hall and Yvonne Ejim have bright futures ahead, no question, and we thank them for the heart, hustle, and class they brought. But the Fever, they're all in, and the league's starting to notice.
The preseason doesn't have to be just about your draft picks at all. It can be about, I need this team to learn how to build chemistry on the floor together, working as a team. By the way, learning my system because I'm a new coach and we're not playing under the Christie Sides rules anymore. You played basketball, Sheryl Swoops? I don't understand.
Here's where Swoops' hot take starts melting under its own heat, because, let's be real, Coach, Stephanie White's roster decisions weren't some wild shot in the dark. They were strategic and rooted in one thing that matters deeply for a young, overhauled team trying to find its identity: chemistry, experience, and fit.